Christianity makes the assumption that the Word of God that pulls order out of chaos at the beginning of time is the thing that's Christ. They're the same thing. If you embody the immortal soul properly, you're the thing that generates order from chaos. You're the transforming agent that sits at the middle of order and chaos. Well, that's the beginning of being, not the beginning of the universe. And the Christians figure out that this logos thing is very much associated with articulated truth.
Gallup took a poll in 2001, and every average American said that they had 10 really close friends. The same poll this year said we had 2.
One of the issues with social media that's been pointed out by many people is that people look like they have a much better life than they really do. People are posting pictures of when they're really happy. They're modifying those pictures to be better looking. Even if they're not modifying the pictures, they're at least selecting the pictures for the best lighting, the best angle, and they're way happier seeming than they really are. So if you look at everyone on Instagram, you might think, man, there are all these happy, beautiful people, and I'm not that good looking and I'm not happy. So I must suck.
This thing is a slot machine.
How's that a slot machine?
Well, every time I check my phone, I'm playing the slot machine to see what did I get. This is one way to hijack people's minds and create a habit, to form a habit. What you do is you make it so when someone pulls a lever, sometimes they get a reward, an exciting reward. And it turns out that this design technique can be embedded inside of all these products.
The West will die without the rebirth of the logos, because the West is that. So with that gone, it's gone. And we've seen what's arisen to replace it. Well, there's fascism, there's communism, and then there's the New Age mess, because it's a mess. You don't have to scratch very far beneath the surface of most people's lives before you find something truly tragic. And I don't mean the sort of tragedy that you whine about. I mean, you know, your mother has Alzheimer's, or your best friend committed suicide, or you have a close relative with cancer, you have a sick child, or you know, there's something wrong with you, because almost everyone has at least one really terrible thing wrong with them. So that tragic sense of being is there with people all the time. And it's also the case that in my experience, like, I rarely meet someone who says, hey, you know, I'm doing everything I possibly can, I'm a hell of a guy. But most people don't feel that way. They feel like they could do a hell of a lot better than they are, and they're quite acutely aware of their faults, and they don't feel that they're what they should be. You have to work and sacrifice the joys of the present for the future constantly, and you know you're going to die, and you have all that weight on you. And to me, again, that's just, how can anything be more true than that? You read Solzhenitsyn, you think, okay, why did the Soviet Union become the absolute hellhole that it was? Solzhenitsyn says, because everyone lied. So then you think about Freud and you think, well, what's the major cause of mental illness? Repression. Well, that's a lie. It's more like lying by omission, actually, than lying by commission. But it doesn't matter, it's still lying. Jung says the same thing. It's like, oh, well, wouldn't it be interesting if the fundamental root of psychopathology was the lie? The fundamental root of political psychopathology is the lie. It's like, well, what if that's what's demolishing your life? People think, especially when they're nihilistic and they become destructive, that the universe is sort of, it's an unfair and arbitrary place, and it's basically bent on their random destruction while they suffer. It's something like that. Yeah, right. Okay, what do you do under those circumstances? That's the question. One potential answer is twist the thing so that you can maybe get what you hypothetically want out of it. The other is rely on your perceptions and your capacity for accurate representation, communicate that, and take your chances. It's like, who's right? Well, that's the battle between good and evil. Okay, so that's one story. So here's another story. This is a story that John Milton wrote. John Milton wrote Paradise Lost, which is one of the prime literary masterpieces of the last 500 years. Now, here's what Milton did. Milton said he was trying to justify the ways of God to man. That was his purpose. And so what he was trying to do was take a look at the world the way it's constituted, with all its suffering and malevolence and corruption, and to make a case why it was still acceptable. And so he did the first, what you might think about as psychoanalytic study of malevolence and evil. So around the corpus of biblical writings, there's an idea of heaven and hell, and They're not referred to much within the corpus of biblical writings, but there are what you might describe as legends that have compiled around them. God's highest angel, who was Satan, Lucifer, the bringer of light, the spirit of rationality, fomented a rebellion against God in heaven and was cast into hell as a consequence. There's this idea that there's this tension between the political and ideological and rational constructions of the rational mind and the sort of transcendent mythology that guides human organization, and that Satan, as God's highest, as the highest angel in God's heavenly kingdom, is a personification of the tendency of the rational mind to produce totalitarian systems and then to fall in love with them. Well, Milton turned this into a great poetic drama, and his hypothesis was that the element of the psyche, let's say, the spiritual element of the psyche that characterized the rational mind, would, by its proclivity to produce these totalizing systems, end up casting itself into hell. And so you could think about it as a prophetic visualization of what was going to come down the centuries after Milton wrote. Because the poets get there before the philosophers. The artists get there maybe before the poets. The philosophers follow in their wake. The poets are the people who have the visions of what's coming farthest down the road.